to have him patting me on the back and calling himself my brother. Good God, it's too sickening." "Not your brother," Deb gently corrected him. "He is mine if he is yours." "Oh, not necessarily." "Deb," said Claud, with an air of desperation, planting himself before her, "what are you going to do?" She looked up at him with narrowing eyes and stiffening lips. "What is there to do?" she returned. "Are you going to put up with this outrage, to condone everything, to tolerate that fellow at Redford, taking the position of a son of the house, or are you going to show them both that they have forfeited their right ever to set foot upon the place again?" "My sister too, you mean?" "Certainly, if you can still bring yourself to call her your sister. She belongs to him now, not to us. She has voluntarily cut herself off from her world. Let her go, Deb, if you love me." He paused, and Deb smiled into his handsome but disgusted face. "Oh, is that to be a test of love?" she asked. "I understand. I am to choose between you. Well," she rose, towering, drawing the big diamond from her engagement finger, "I am going to her now. I ought to have been there hours ago, but waited back to receive you. Good bye. And pray don't come again to this contaminated house. We have too horribly gone down in the world." "I know it, and I would not have you compromised on any account. We Pennycuicks, we don't abandon our belongings, especially when they may be dying. We sink or swim together." She held the jewel out to him. "What rot!" he blurted vulgarly, flushing with anger that was not unmixed with shame. "Why will you wilfully misunderstand me? Put it on, Deb, put it on, and don't be so childish." "I will not put it on," said she, "until you apologise for the things you have been saying to me, and the manner of your saying them." "My dear child, I do apologise humbly, if I have said what I shouldn't. Perhaps I have, but I thought we were past the need for reserves and for weighing words, you and I. And really, Debbie, you know " "Hush!" She stopped him from further arguing, but she did not stop him from taking her hand and cramming the diamond back into its old place. "I must go. Father cannot. He is ill himself, and Miss Keene is too frightfully modest to nurse him alone, so that I must send Keziah back, and stay." "Can't Miss Keene go and send her back, and stay?" "Oh, she would be no use in such an illness as Mary's. And I must see for myself how things are, whether they are taking proper care of the poor unfortunate child." "Is she so very ill? I did not know that." There was commiseration in his tone, but in his heart he hoped that the deservedly sick woman would crown her escapades by dying as quickly as possible. Then, perhaps, he could forgive her. Deb gave him sundry confidences. On his appearing to take them in a proper spirit, she gave him some more tea, and so they lapsed into their normal relations. When she again urged the need for her to be getting off on her errand of mercy, he magnanimously offered to drive her. She accepted with a full heart, and her arms about his neck. While she was getting ready, he repacked his portmanteau, and ordered it to be put into the buggy. "It's no use my going back," he said to her, when they were on the road, "with you away and your father too ill to see me. I'll put up at the hotel tonight, and go on to town in the morning. You can send for me there whenever you want me, you know." "Just as you like, dear," said Deb quietly, and for the rest of their journey they talked commonplaces. When they reached the parsonage gate, from which the maid of all work and a group of street gossips scattered in panic at their approach. The lovers shook hands perfunctorily. "Good bye, then, for a little while," said Claud. "You don't want me to come in, do you?" "Certainly not," said she coldly. "You know that it is totally against my judgment and my wishes that you go in yourself, Deb." "Yes, but one's own judgment must be one's guide." Thus they parted, each with a grievance against the other, a root of bitterness to be nourished by much thinking about it, and by the circumstance that poor Mary neither died nor was repudiated. Claude drove on to the hotel, to be further disgusted with his accommodation and his dinner. Deb walked into the house, which hitherto she had visited in a spirit of kindly condescension, to be revolted by the new aspect which her changed relations with it now gave to its every feature. Ruby, neglected, with a jam-smeared face; the flustered maid, tousled, grubby, her frock gaping; the horrible hall, with its imitation marble paper and staring linoleum; the prim, trivial, unaired, unused drawing-room, with its pathetic attempts at elegance. Deb inwardly curled up at the sight of these things, as things now belonging to the family. When the master of the house came hurrying in to her, rusty, unshaven, abject, she would have changed places with a Christian of old Rome facing a lion of the amphitheatre. "Oh, this is good of you. This is kind indeed," Mr Goldsworthy greeted her, and threatened in his grateful emotion to fall at her feet. "I did not dare to hope." But Deb shudderingly swept him aside, with his gratitude and his excuses and his timid justifications. He could stand up before his other critics. He had a clear conscience, he said, but before her he knew himself for what he was. He followed her like a dog to Mary's room, obeyed her directions like a slave, wept when she consented to say no more, and stooped to beg from him a solemn vow and promise that he would be good to his wife. This was after the doctors had refused to permit his wife's removal to Redford to be nursed, and after Redford had practically been in command of his establishment for 7 weeks. Christmas is the time for reconciliations, and by Christmas Mary was convalescent, pale as she had never been since childhood, and wearing a little cap over her shaved head, very humble and gentle, and strangely docile in her attitude towards her captor, who now gave himself all the airs of a husband of his class. He was the benevolent despot of his womankind, the god of the machine. She was as properly submissive as if born in the ranks. Negatively so, that is to say; positively, her manifestations of duty to him took the form of services and endearments bestowed upon his child and sister. Her first occupation, after she could use her hands, was to improve Ruby's wardrobe. The little girl, now her own, appealed to her motherly heart, a saving interest in her wrecked life. The poor old ex-housekeeper was the other prop to which she clung for a footing in the new and alien world which was now all her home. When Miss Goldsworthy proposed to go out into a situation not to be in the way of the new wife, and when her brother would have approved the plan as only right and proper, and as facilitating his schemes for the raising of the tone of his establishment to Redford level, Mary protested vehemently, and with tears, the only occasion of her showing a Pennycuick spirit since renouncing the Pennycuick name. The old maid, for her part, was enthusiastically devoted to the new sister-in-law, whom it was her joy to pet and coddle. "I can be of use to her," she trembling commended herself